The Event Industry News podcast is sponsored by Present Communications. Present provides broadcast quality live, hybrid, and virtual event production trusted by organizations where reliability really matters. From corporate town halls and conferences to high profile live streams, they design and deliver fully resilient systems that work first time. Hello, everybody. Welcome along to the Event Industry News podcast with me, James Dickson, wishing you all a very good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever or wherever you tune into today's podcast from. And as I'm recording a few back to back today, I always reference the day that we're recording. It is a Monday. It is the Monday after Spain have won the World Cup. So I've already said it on one of the recordings today, but I'm not going to shy away from anything. I'm very happy that Spain won the World Cup last night, and congratulations and continued congratulations to any of our Spanish event pals on your side lifting the trophy last night. It was great to watch. So on with today's episode and back to the important business of events, and back to the important business of catching up with one of our podcast regulars, Kieran Garlick. Kieran is, of course, from Present Communications, sponsors of the Event Industry News podcast, and joins me today from, I'm going to say sunnier climes, but it's pretty good in the UK still after this spell of good weather. But Kieran's joining us today from Dubai. So thanks for taking a bit of time out of what is not a work trip. I think you're actually enjoying a bit of downtime, Kieran.
Yeah, I mean, this is a holiday officially, although if I'm honest, it is now 3:30 in the afternoon and I haven't moved away from my laptop yet. So, holiday, but you're right, it is pretty hot over here. I think they're hoping to hit 43 this week, which it's just, I mean, look, I got Irish skin. This, my hair, I come out here and it's kind of brown. I go back, it'll be ginger.
Yeah.
I'll be freckly and hopefully I won't be too burnt. But I've been staying inside and it's very well air conditioned over here. So
No.
yeah,
Beautiful place, but at 43 degrees, it's not like you can even nip out and hop in the
you
pool at
can't.
2 o'clock in the afternoon, can you? Got to
I
wait
haven't
for the
actually found
evening.
the pool yet either. So and I've been here for 2 days.
Well, somebody who said to me once, when you run your own business or you work for yourself, you're never really working, but you're never really off either. You
No,
kind of float in a
exactly.
constant state of flux between the two. But no, we appreciate you taking the time to catch up, and
I appreciate you having me.
we've tried to set one up a couple of times, and we've had to wait for you to be on holiday for actually to be able to actually be able to pin you down.
I hadn't appreciated that. That is so true. I'm sorry. I have cancelled a few, but yeah, I'm on
But
holiday now, so I got free
again,
time.
again, that's a good thing. It means you're busy. So yeah, we were when Kieran comes on the podcast, for those who've listened before, we tend to not really have a fixed agenda as such. We have a little conversation off air beforehand and think, what could we chat about today? Are there any pain points? Are there any talking points? And I was chuffed that to find out that Kieran actually listens to this podcast as well as appears on it, and and is aware of some of the stuff that we've been talking about recently on the subject of training. We welcomed Rick Stainton to a recent episode of the podcast to talk about, from the power of events, a name that a lot of our podcast listeners will know from the industry, and talking about this new kind of work experience project. And I've not got the notes from that recording in front of me, but effectively they've been working with industry in the events industry to develop these experience places, and they've been going out into schools and talking to young people between the ages of kind of 11, 12 and up to sort of 15, 16 sort of GCSE age about the events industry, about roles that are available, about things that might possibly interest young people of that age who may not even be aware that an events industry exists and what jobs may be in there. And that got me and Kieran to sort of talking off air about training and about development into the industry. And I'll sort of throw it over to you now, Kieran. One thing that I said is that I'm yet to meet anybody that I can recall really clearly who's ever said to me that their ambition in life from the age of 12 or 13 was to work in the events industry. We still have this multi-billion-dollar industry that is fundamentally built off people who have accidentally fallen into it.
I remember when I was at school, So, and for people who have listened to me on this podcast or anywhere else before, I'm probably going to rehash the story of how I got into events. So I apologise for that. But actually, I'll add this other little bit of information, which I don't think I've ever told anybody before. But I just joined my secondary school. I was very fortunate to go to a very good secondary school, a grammar school. And they had a drama department, but they didn't do theatre as a subject. So there was no theatre studies or no technical theatre or nothing like that. You could do drama and you could learn how to act, but I don't do that. That's not me. Anyway, so I would have been 12 years old or something. And it was lunchtime, and a friend of mine at the time, I said to him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm just going to the drama department. Apparently, like, you can get involved and like help hang lights up or something." He was like, "I'm not really sure, but I'm going to go there." I was like, "I'll come with you." And so that's how I got into events, essentially. So I went to the theatre, and I ended up hanging lights and doing the sound and doing all the technical stuff. And like I said, there was no technical theatre at my school. It wasn't taught, so there was no teacher involved. I was just very, very lucky that there were a couple of older boys in the school who really knew what they were doing, and they learned from older boys before them, or what, I don't know how it works, but there were a couple of older boys, and they taught me how to hang a light and how to, whatever. And then that was it. And then we went from doing that at our school. Like I said, I went to a very good school, and we had 60 plays a year is what we tried to do. And we would do all of, as me and 3 or 4 of us would light and do the sound and whatever. I went to very few lessons at my school. And I was very fortunate that my teachers turned a blind eye to that, because like I said, it wasn't an official thing I was doing. I didn't go to my lessons, but it was not like I was out, playing truant. They knew I was in the theatre, and so then we started doing the other local schools, and then so that's how I got into it. So it was all completely by accident. So to your point, there was no kind of formal training, there was no formal route. I didn't sign up anywhere. And the reason that I'm in events is because one day I was walking past the theatre and thought that would be cool. But had I not, I don't know how other people would have done that. There were only a very few of us at my school who had that opportunity or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what the formal route in would be for something like that. I mean, I work in a local theatre group, and again, that's
until somebody comes along and kind of says to you, "All right, you like that? Well, did you know that you could do this, and this?"
Yeah.
And I remember, I mean, I'm of an age where, the internet was just in its infancy, and you used to have to sort of load up, discs, CD-ROMs with encyclopedias.
Did you get the free CDs through your door with Free Serve? Was it Free Serve from Dickson's?
And I remember going onto this program. So I mean, for context, I did my GCSEs in '96. I stayed at secondary school till '98 to do A levels. So I turned 18 in 1998. So do the maths from there, everybody. And I remember sitting with a careers officer who came into the school, who sat at this, PC with a CD-ROM, and we literally did this checkbox thing on this computer. And the idea is that you entered all the answers to all these questions, and it would spit out jobs that were ideal for you. And I can't for the life of me remember what this computer spat out, but it was nothing like what I don't think any of it inspired me. And it's interesting to listen to you tell that story, because my story is bizarrely familiar and similar. I picked up an electric guitar when I was 15. My nature was that I wanted to find out how that worked, how the amplifier worked, basically open up anything, take a screwdriver to the back of anything, or if I could unscrew it, open it up, look inside it to figure out how it was working. That's exactly what I would do. From there, I learned how a microphone was plugged in, how that gets amplified through a mixing desk, how to operate that, all purely by just seeing something in the corner of a room. And ended up doing something similar at school, where I'd end up, on a mixing desk and pushing buttons on mini disc players to activate music for school shows. I know. And at no point did I ever think that that would be a career or there would be an opportunity.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to the age of 45, 46 next month. And, last week I'm sat behind 2 iPads, 2 laptops with a vision mixer, and one of the iPads is remote controlling a mixing desk, and I'm running sound and doing tech ops at an awards event. And the day before that, I was at a conference. And it's bizarrely similar, sort of 30 years on from that I'm now earning a living doing that. But nobody had said to me that that was possible when I was 15, 16. And bringing it back to how I opened sort of today's chat about training and development, I would just reflect on that recent conversation with Rick Stainton and say that it's brilliant to see what they're doing with their organization and getting out into schools to get these messages in at an early stage. Have you, as an organization, have you interacted at all with academic institutions? Have you had approaches from people saying, how do we get involved with the industry?
I mean, we're a small company, so it's difficult, and we've looked at apprenticeships and things like that, but it's tough. What we do, and we've done for a number of years, is like work experience placements and stuff like that. We've done them with local colleges and schools. We've done them with corporates like Global, for example. So we've done lots of that kind of work experience, and some of that's quite long term. People like Global are doing like these placements for like 2 months.
Right. Wow.
So we've done something like that. I guess a lot of the challenges that, and again, I don't know. I'm sure there's people listening, and they can probably inform me where I've gone wrong here. But to your point, like, people don't really think of like events, or in my case, technical events, as a career. And so when you're talking to organizations about apprenticeships, like we do a lot of live streaming on TikTok and stuff like that. So they go, oh, so you're a media company? No, we're not. We're not a media company. So it's really difficult to get that match, and to find young people who are studying or who are specifically interested in events. It's much easier. For example, we say, oh, we do technology for live events. They go, oh, sound. We've got sound engineers. Well, the sound engineers is great, but that's like one bit. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's very difficult to get that matched up right. So that's the challenge that we've had. So and I don't know what the answer is to that. I don't know. I'm sure somebody will email in, hopefully, and tell me where I should be looking.
Well, definitely more communication at an early age, I think. And the same could be said for any industry. So it's important, that we sort of, stress it. Obviously, you can't just have people going into every school talking about the events industry, and not because every industry will want their sort of slice of the pie to an extent. But even if we fast forward and you look at the pharmaceutical industry or or law, for example, industries with very good connections to academic institutions who are very much got their fingers on the pulse of the best students and who's doing really well on certain courses. The amount of people that get recruited straight out of university in certain industries is significant because they've got long-standing relationships with academic institutions, and that's how they've historically recruited into their industries. They'll find the people who are top of their class.
So there's another organization. Are we allowed to do shout outs? I can do shout outs.
Yeah, of course.
So a good friend of mine, Joe Chilvers, he runs the training department. And I was at lunch. I think he's been on your podcast as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So they run the training department now off the back of the production department. And I was having lunch with him and a number of his other kind of suppliers the other day. And a lot of them were production experts. And I say production insofar as, they were CAD designers or creative types of some kind, or set builders, and certainly very different to what we do. But I was surprised, especially in the kind of creative and design businesses. They were very involved with like higher education institutions, whatever they were. A lot of them had links, so I was surprised. I don't know whether it was that little niche, because it's not something. You have White Light again, like White Light are well known for their kind of apprenticeships and whatnot. So there are companies out there doing it. But yeah, I think it's just about raising awareness, and also that the other challenge is that there's so many different niches, right? There's so many different people will say to me when I tell them, we do AV for events. They go, "Oh, you do music?" No, not really. It's like, "Oh, well, you do I don't know, awards dinners." Kind of. So. Yeah. there's so much different, so many different kind of niches, I suppose. And the other thing is, sorry, go on.
No, you made me laugh because I've got two boys who are 23 and 20 now. I've worked for myself now for 16 years, and when somebody says, "Oh, what does your dad do?" they always laugh because they said we can't really explain it. Because they'll say the same thing. Oh, he does events. Oh, he's a sound engineer. Well, he can do that, but he doesn't. Or does he do lights and video? Well, yeah, that. What does he plan them and run them? Yeah, he does bits of that. What else? And nobody can. And I get maybe that's a problem. Maybe because it can be so difficult to give a job description or to identify it until somebody starts in the industry or finds themselves accidentally doing a role. Maybe they don't find it. Maybe do we need to clearer define roles in the industry? I don't know.
Or define them less. I don't know. Maybe like when we talk about, I don't know, being a sound engineer, people are like, well, I don't want to be a sound engineer. So maybe I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But
go on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, there's also, it's a very technical role, I guess. The way that I came through, if you like, and so for me, it's not just about learning. It's not just about knowing about the industry and the jobs. There's also where are the opportunities to actually learn, how to do this stuff. I can go to a school and learn about theatre, I suppose. There are probably apprenticeships that I can do in broadcast. But
sure.
I'm not sure. Again, maybe someone's going to email and tell me I'm wrong here, but I'm not sure where the actual kind of technical education opportunities are for the events industry. It's all very well saying we need to get people aware of what's going on in events, and then what do they do? And then where do they go and learn about how to be a sound engineer? I mean, I can go and shadow somebody at a live music venue, and I can pay £100 a night and they can teach me how to mix a band. But that's not really what we're talking about, So I don't know what the next steps are as well. There's a whole ecosystem,
Yeah, and I mean, if, looking outside of sort of the technical production element, the actual organization and the planning, you take you take your average trade show now, the amount of tech platforms that are in use, people who've got a historic or a youth background in coding or gaming, anything that's IT heavy, if we can use if that's a way of describing it, it strikes me as somebody who'd be brilliant to work on, coordinating the tech stacks that are prevalent in every sort of big event now, whether that be the registration platform, the event app, the ticketing, the badging,
and
the
making it all work together.
Making it all work together. That the young people today are so technically savvy that they might not even realize that or they probably don't realize that actually some of their interests and their tech savviness could be really, really useful to big event organizers now. They could probably learn some of these tech platforms in half the time of people who are having to adapt and learn because they've done it in a more traditional way.
It's funny, isn't it? Like in the technical world, if you're a sound engineer or you're a PowerPoint operator or you're a lighting engineer or whatever, becoming IT literate has become critical over the last 10 years. A sound engineer or a lighting engineer 20 years ago did not have to know how to run anything digital, let alone how to build a network. Now you have to know how to build a network. And I suppose maybe, you're right, that's coming in for production as well. You have to know how to plumb all these things together. Maybe the next thing is, taking, your marketing executives or whatever have to know how to. I was reading this thing the other day, sorry, jumping around, but a lot of these platforms now are obviously integrating AI.
Yeah.
So it's how do you manage, that? How do you pull data out of your platform when actually you've got 6 platforms? And maybe that's the next thing in the events industry. But again, going back to our original point, who's training for that?
Yeah. Well, if you look at corresponding industries, this occurred to me recently, is that if you'd have looked at in football, speaking of football, the World Cup has just finished. So football, 25, 30 years ago, and you just said, right, we're going to recruit somebody to work under Brian Clough at Nottingham Forest who's going to do data analytics and statistical analytics of players. the old school thinking would have been, what an absolute load of nonsense. We don't need
Yeah.
data, computers involved in football. And now,
Yeah.
could you even contemplate anybody even remotely connected with football of a decent level? And I'm talking sort of in the UK, right down to sort of 5th, 6th tier, non-league football.
Yeah.
Even those sort of top, upper level non-league clubs, they'll have
Yeah.
somebody who's got a laptop and an iPad with them, who's monitoring players, who's looking at
Yeah.
data,
And they're all probably wearing armbands as well, tracking their heart
yeah, they're
rates.
all wearing trackers. So when you
That film, what was that film? Is it Moneybags or something? Is that what it was?
Oh, Moneyball, the
Moneyball.
baseball one. Yeah. Looking at all of
Yeah.
that, and I just think in the events industry, we've slowly but surely stepped forward now, and people are worried about AI taking roles away, but I think there's a completely counter argument to that says, well, it could be creating brand new roles. It could be creating roles for people that we didn't
get
even
on
know we
board,
needed.
or get left behind.
Yeah,
I think,
exactly.
and there's no evidence that people are complaining to AI in the same way that they were complained about the Industrial Revolution. And everyone thought machines were going to take away jobs and cars were going to take away jobs, and it won't. You're right. There'll be new roles. The challenge is just who's going to step up and take them. It'll be a redistribution. Maybe we're going to find different people. I think part of the challenge is that, as you'll know, the events industry is a very relational, very personal industry. We don't sell ourselves on social media. I mean, I do quite a lot of social media, but that's not, people don't look at it and go, oh, he looks like a really good event manager or whatever. It doesn't work like that. People need to see you and meet you, and they need to shake your hands and look in your eyes. And the events industry has always been like that, I think. And the amount of times I've lost work because the client knew somebody else, and it's not because they're better, or it's not because they're cheaper. It's because I knew them, I met them, I trusted them.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the fear with AI, right? Is how does that fit into a world? And that's why part of me thinks that actually AI isn't going to take over in the events industry. I was reading a really interesting thing the other day. I can't remember the name of the author, but he was an AI expert, and he was basically saying the thing that people have underestimated is what he called the human friction, is that people don't want it to take over. So and so I think the events industry will always be very personal. But that said, that doesn't mean AI and other tools don't have a place. And whoever gets on board with that and knows them and learns them and accepts that's who's going to be winning in the next few years or whatever.
Well, absolutely, and I'm using it. I'm not going to say on a day-to-day level yet, but particularly in the last 2 months, I think I've used it more than I've ever done before. But just for mundane tasks, proofreading award scripts. I was doing. I mean,
how does that work? I've got to ask the question. Presumably you proofread them yourself anyway, but I mean, that'll do a lot of the hard work, the AI.
Well, yeah, the old classic
what
sort
happens
of
if it misses something?
wood for the trees and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
I literally, I uploaded the awards presentation deck, and I uploaded the script, and I uploaded the list that I've been sent by the client of the shortlisted finalists, and the other list that I'd been sent of the winners of each category.
Yeah.
And I took all 4 of those documents and I banged them into an AI platform, and I said, analyze all of these and tell me if anything doesn't quite correspond. Even down to things like, is it spelled right?
Yeah.
So a lot of companies use lowercase letters instead of uppercase. Just as a cross-reference.
And did it pick up those things?
Yeah. It picked up 3 things. It picked up a company name. A lot of tech companies have got like sort of, they might have a .com in their company name or whatever it may be, and it picked up on some inconsistencies, not with spelling but with formatting. It's formatted like this in the script. It's not formatted like this on slide 3 of the deck, and they've won an award and it's formatted differently as well. How would you like it to be? Does it need to be consistent? And I made some subtle changes to it. I've used it, like I said, for mundane things, and it's been bizarrely brilliant. I was doing a gig I did a gig 2 weekends ago. It was a hen party, and I was dropped in last minute. I was parachuted in last minute to play bass. Now I'm a guitar player. I play a bit of bass. It was something called Rockyoke, right?
Yeah, I
So
know it. Yeah, yeah. So
get
you
a percent.
play and they sing. Yeah,
They sing.
amazing.
There's 200 songs on our list. I was parachuted in with 5 days to go, and thought, crap, I ain't got time to learn 200 songs again or brush up on 200. So I put the Rockyoke song sheet into AI, said it's a hen party. Here's the rough ages, the sort of demographic. Could you analyze anything on this list that you think could crop up at a hen party? Give me the sort of the top 20 that you think might be requested. It was frighteningly accurate.
Really?
Because what we then did is we send the list to the client and we say, look, before we arrive on Saturday evening, send us your list of requests. We need 20 requests to fill 90 minutes of music. And 60% of what AI told me would likely crop up eventually landed on their request list.
Amazing.
It was weird. And it meant then that in the 5 days, I sort of brushed up on a handful of stuff rather than 200 songs. And then when the list arrived, I could boil it down a bit more. Honestly, it is kind of event related because it's live music related, but it's just an example of using the tool to sort of analyze and say, look, give me a fighting chance here. What do you think this could do? And I see that being used. I you know, having done that, I could see myself doing that in events, you know, for other stuff, you know, putting just bits of information in there. And we talk about data analytics, you know, and you know, just having somebody competent. You don't even need to be a data analyst or a code or anything like that. If you've got somebody who's savvy enough and knows how to work these tools, that's creating potentially a valuable job role in an organization.
You and I both, you know, run small businesses. I mean, there's an element of small business stuff that can be done in the back end. You know, we're looking at the moment how we get all of our invoicing done by AI, for example.
Okay.
Because there are multiple platforms, but also things like, you know, we as a business, we specialize in kind of hybrid events, live and hybrid, but you know, we've you know, very good at the kind of broadcasty kind of stuff. As a result, a lot of our quotes, there are similarities between a lot of the projects that we do. You know, if you're filming something, there are cameras, you know, do you know what I mean? And so actually, do we need to raise the same quote every week and every week and every week? Or can we just say to AI, we've got this job coming up, client wants X, Y, Z. It's kind of similar to this other project we did. Do me a quote, you know, bang. And so we're looking at how, because we can't do that at the moment, but wouldn't it be cool? So there's a lot of that kind of stuff in the back end as well. And also, you know, client has spec this, what does that look like in terms of a, you know, project scope or whatever, or you know, raise this quote for a client, have we missed anything? Another, you know, great thing. Yes, so there's a lot of stuff like that. But again, I'm looking at now, do I have to bring in somebody who knows about AI to build stuff like that, you know? Because people in the, you know, the people who we already employ, technical people, but in events, that's not their bag. It's just too new, isn't it, I suppose? So
well, it is.
I don't know.
I think, I mean, I'm no prophet, you know, and there's many more wiser people than me in this industry, but, you know, I see people coming in the next 10 to 15 years, or even sooner than that, with skill sets and personalities that are maybe slightly different to what we traditionally see. I think, you know, people who work in events, for the most part, I mean, are very personable, extrovert in some respects, you know, but I see, because of the way that technology is playing its part now, and perhaps the demographic of people who are most associated with using that in a really sort of high level capacity, we're going to see people of a more neurodivergent background, maybe people who are a little bit more introverted.
I'm gonna call you out on this one, James, because in my world we've got plenty of neurodivergency. I can assure you. God, in the video engineers are well, you may not have met them, because most production companies or agencies, they hide them from clients. You know, we put them at the back, not because they're not good at their job, but just because, you know, everybody's stressed on a live event, and there's a lot of hormones and tempers and all that kind of stuff. And the last thing you want is a very honest engineer telling a client how it really is, you know. Well,
I
they're
can't
trying to
believe
fix everything.
that's bizarre that you've said that, because I literally worked on an awards a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
and I needed a lighting up on it, and the guys that I work with were phenomenally busy as well, and they said, "Oh, so and so's available." I won't say his name. So and so's available. We've worked with him before. I said, "Oh yeah, he's great," and he's a video engineer, and he runs his own kind of freelance, and he does a lot of sort of motorsport stuff. He's always around the world doing motorsport filming and all the rest of it. And he is exactly like that. He doesn't do lighting a lot anymore because he's special in his video, but he is literally, there's no filter.
Yeah,
There is no filter.
exactly.
He came in and instantly went, "Why is that like that? Why is that like that? Right, take
Yeah.
that. We need to sort
But
this
for
out."
me,
That's
as like a
wrong.
technical manager, that's amazing,
Yeah,
because I got nobody
yeah,
bull lying to me. I got nobody telling me fibs, trying to hide anything or whatever. Like, that's amazing. But you can't put that person in front of a client like 30 minutes before doors when something's not working or whatever.
yeah.
And those kind of people, anyway, back to the original point, those kinds of people I imagine would be great. I mean, already in the kind of video conferencing, what we used to call video conferencing and webcasting world, we would get people like that anyway, because it was you were sitting between video and audio and the internet, and so that was a big thing years ago. And so you'd get a lot of people like that who knew how to do live streaming because they understood the internet. And don't forget, when we started live streaming, a lot of hotels didn't have internet. That's how long ago it was. So when they start putting internet in, and you have to do we used to run Cisco encoders, and you'd have to speak to the IT teams and get them to patch you through the firewalls and all this stuff. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but so there's a lot of people with interesting personalities who got into that early doors, and I suspect it's those kind of people who will probably lead the way in AI. I mean, I worked on a big event the other day, and there's a video engineer, again, won't name him, but absolutely phenomenal, who runs the whole show off his laptop, just button presses, and the lights are triggered, and the videos again, there's cameras flying in, and the screens are moving, and there's graphics on the live stream, and he's just sitting there doing it off his laptop. So yeah, and I think that they're the kind of people. It's like anything, isn't it? The certain types of people will always thrive, and I suspect those people will have their day when AI and everything kind of is key to what we do. So
I think I see it all the time. I'm on LinkedIn, and I see that so and so's spoken at a panel session, or there's an industry event going off, and one of the topics is going to be the use of AI, and the conversation we've had today. You could probably find 1,000 other conversations similar to that somewhere in the events industry. I suppose it's always good, and I've said this on the podcast many times over the years, it's always good when these conversations are happening. I don't think you can have too many of them, because all it's doing is exposing the subject matter to more and more people. If more of these conversations are happening, more people become aware of it, more people might think, "Oh, do you know what? I'm a bit behind in actually sort of looking at some of the AI tools I could use. Maybe I need to do that." If it prompts one person to go off and have a look at it in a little bit more detail, then conversations like this are good. They're worth having.
I think also, we live in a world, in an events industry rather, where everything's there's blurred lines for everything. And what I mean by that is, as an events manager, you might have to know something about lighting, or you might have to know something about how the sound system works, or you might have to know something about the event registration platform. I think AI is coming in, and whether you are going to be an AI expert or not, you need to know what the capabilities are. In the same way, an event manager will know that if somebody's speaking from the lectern, they need a lectern microphone. I mean, you have to know that as an event manager.
It seems obvious, but we've all been there.
Well, of course, it seems obvious because we know, right?
Yeah.
But maybe somebody who isn't in the industry or is new, they might not know. And it'll be the same with AI. Over the next few years, we'll start to learn that there are certain things that are expected, and certain things that work well, and certain things that don't. And you don't have to be an AI expert to know those things. Just like you don't need to be a sound engineer to know that you need a lectern mic if you've got somebody speaking at a lectern.
Yeah. I've always said a lot of it's about common sense, but also, what is obvious to somebody who knows is not obvious to somebody who doesn't know.
Of
You know,
course, and we're going to spend a few years now getting caught out on stuff. So, you know, a lot of people will know that you need a lector mic because one time they didn't have one, and they got caught out. So, you know, and that will happen. You know, it's a learning experience, isn't it?
yeah, and there's things that no amount of training or, you know, industry work experience can teach you. You only develop that by being sort of on site, and this is said where the human
Absolutely.
element is retained in the industry. I was doing a business conference for care home managers in Nottingham 3 weeks ago, and I found out from the client a week before. They give me very sketchy information, which has never happened before in the events industry. Nobody's ever had sketchy information. No,
My
nobody's
brief has always been full and complete.
nobody's ever had sketchy information from the event owner or organizer in advance. And I found
Yeah.
out a week before that it was in a permanent marquee venue,
Nice.
this hotel, the week that it was hitting kind of 36
Oof.
degrees, and that there was no air conditioning and no way of controlling the temperature inside the marquee. So we were literally in a greenhouse, and at 1:30 in the afternoon, we clocked the internal temperature to be 38.2 in this marquee, and we're trying to retain people's you know, we tried every trick in the book to try and, you know, we were pointing fans out of doors at one end of the marquee to try and promote airflow out whilst putting fans in opposite directions. You know, there's no training school for that.
Yeah.
You know, that's the sort of thing that you just need people who have a certain, you know, instinct, or, you know.
Yeah. And also coming back to the training thing, so from a technical point of view, it's the same as well. Like you can learn the principles of audio, for example, or video, and you can learn how it works. And I always say to people, if you want to be a good problem solver, like, you need to know how this stuff works from the beginning, if you like. It's all very well understanding how to do audio on your iPad, you know, mixing sound on your iPad, but like, if you don't know how a mixing desk works, that becomes a challenge, right? And I think that's the same all the way through. So I think it's important that people learn those, you know, really kind of technical, you know, things like I don't know, what's the voltage of a SDI cable. Like, it's important because when something goes wrong, that information might help you fix something. But you're absolutely right. A lot of this is learned on site. And I was on a job the other day, and it was really interesting. I had this young sound engineer who I probably wouldn't tell you his name, but I can't remember it anyway. But he was a young guy, and he was clearly very fresh. He was clearly very, very intelligent, and he wasn't silly, and he knew what he was doing. So in no way was he like unable to do the job or whatever. He was a good sound engineer. However, I watched him as he was setting up his desk. It was a bit complicated what we were doing, and I was like, that is a really weird way to set up your desk. Like, why? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me, because have you considered, like, if this happens and this happens and this happens, then you're going to make life really difficult for yourself because you've set your desk up wrong. I would say wrong. And so we had that conversation, and he had set up his desk wrong. But the reason he set it up wrong is because he'd never shadowed another engineer. He was really smart, really capable, and he'd got a mixing desk, and he'd worked out how it worked, and he'd worked out what he could do, and he could absolutely do the job, like I said. But he hadn't shadowed somebody or had training from somebody who's had that real life experience, where all of a sudden, I don't know, you thought you were doing a panel for 4 and now it's a panel for 8, but you got 3 minutes, go.
And you've left yourself no room
left yourself no, yeah, or whatever it is, or all of a sudden, did you know there are actually 2 camera crews turning up, or person B is now going to present remotely, and how are you going to put that on your desk? How are you going to sort that out? And it's, oh well, I hadn't really thought about that, because you hadn't had that real life experience. So it's a mix, isn't it? I suppose I think it's really important to understand the technicals and the real in-depth, because there are very few engineers out there now, I think, who really understand their trade, like, really, like I don't know, like, how does DMX work, for example?
Sure.
you know,
Yeah,
or,
yeah,
or whatever.
they can run the iPad, but can they actually
They can
set
run
the
the iPad.
can they set all the addresses correctly on the lights as they're going on the truss?
Well, we get it with vMix quite a lot, and I
Yeah,
had this conversation with somebody a couple of months ago, and she was saying, yeah, I can run a show on vMix, absolutely. I was like, okay, cool. So when we have to add a hybrid thing at the last minute, or you've got to set up some extra video buses, or can you set up some extra mix? She's like, no, I can't do that. I can run a show. I was like, well, that's great. So now I need somebody to build it and somebody to run it. Where actually I could just, do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And I tell you the analogy. I don't know whether this is a good one or not, but she was talking about, well, what can I do and what can't I do? And I was saying, well, you know, if my car's broken, I don't take it to a driver to fix it. You know, I take it to a mechanic to fix it.
yeah,
You know, if I've got a specific show that's really complicated to
yeah,
run, then maybe I do need a race car driver. But nine
yeah,
times out of 10, what I actually need is a really good mechanic who's going to make it work.
yeah.
Because if they do that right, the show's easy. You know, if your prep work is done right and you understand your systems and you've built them correctly, the show's easy. The show should go off without a hitch.
Yeah,
in theory, if you've prepared right.
You're absolutely right, and I'm gonna kind of not wrap things up, but I'm gonna give one more sort of real world sort of observation, if I may, is what I call the Bose the curse of the Bose Stick PA. Right?
Yeah,
It's the tale of the Bose
L series,
the Bose Stick PA system.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of really lovely sort of pubs and places in little villages around where I live in South Yorkshire, and it's become a really big thing over the last few years where they all do like a little bit of live music. You know, 4 o'clock on a Saturday, Sunday afternoon, you'll have a singer. Sometimes it's a guy or a girl with an acoustic guitar and a PA system. A lot of the time, it's somebody with some backing tracks on their phone or on iPad and the Bose Stick PA. And many people out there who've you know might know what I'm talking about. And they Bluetooth their device to the Bose Stick PA. They plug one microphone cable straight in. All there is a knob to turn up the volume and a knob to turn up the volume on their backing tracks. And a friend of mine runs a few bars in the town centre near where I live, and I've kind of installed and configured sound systems in there so that if he has a live singer on, they can literally just turn up with no equipment, with their acoustic guitar, with their backing tracks, and bang, there's a mixing desk there ready to go on the wall, really easy to use. And a singer phoned me in a panic, and it was like sort of 5 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. She said, I've got here. I was told there's a PA system. I've no idea how to use it. She'd never seen a mixing desk. She'd been gigging for years, but only with the Bose Stick PA, because the technology has been simplified and dumbed down so that the computer is doing all the work. The brains inside the box is doing all the work. All she's ever seen is a single knob that says volume on it. And when you actually give her the actual, you know, the full tool to use, has absolutely no clue. And that's potentially a danger there, not just in technical production, but in event operations, in life as a whole, that things are being made
Alan
so
and
easy.
One-touch compression.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. And things are being boiled down and being controlled by brains and microchips to the extent where we can do everything with a touch, that nobody actually knows how to do it properly should that break. And I think that's a wider. I tell that tale as a sort of a wider story. The tale of the Bose Stick PA, you know, is something that probably translates into many other aspects of modern life.
Yeah, I know we're wrapping up, but one thing that's really been bugging me. It's just mentioned this an hour ago, but have you had anyone on the podcast recently talking about rates as for freelancers?
No.
Okay, the reason I ask is because it links in with the question is that there's a wide range of experiences and training and all that kind of thing, and maybe this is one for next time. As I think about it, this is a big question, but it'd just be interesting to know what people's thoughts are on levels of experience, training, qualifications, and how that impacts rates. Anyway, right, that's going to be a big, because I hear a lot of people saying you know, it's expensive to live, you know, I need to get paid XYZ, and but I also see a lot of people who haven't had the training and the experience, like the young lad I was talking about, who's very smart but doesn't have that, experience of live events. Anyway, yeah, it's a bigger question. Let's
I've
not start
scribbled
that
it
one now.
down. We're going to talk
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
We're going to
You know
talk.
what?
I put that
I just
down.
realised what I've done. I've just gone off on a tangent that's a whole nother podcast.
It's an episode hand grenade. We'll go with that next time. And I'm going to do something before we wrap. The last thing I'm going to say today is I'm going to give a shout out to somebody, and I don't know their surname. A couple of times today we've said we won't mention names. I'm now going to just mention a name, and if anybody knows who this guy is, can they put me in touch with him? So I ran an awards event in London a few weeks ago, industry awards event, and it was at the Ministry in sort of Southwark, connected to Ministry of Sound, and there was a freelance sound engineer there, and his name was Pedro, and he was Portuguese.
I know exactly who you
Pedro
mean.
or Pablo, Portuguese, young guy, one of the nicest AV technicians I've ever had the pleasure of working with. Personable, knew his stuff, had everything set up in a few minutes while still chatting away.
Is this the guy? He's full time at the Ned.
What is I don't know. I just said, are you freelance? Are you here all the time? And he came in with like a branded Ministry shirt, but he says, no, freelancer coming in here, and I'm one of the regular guys here. But he had everything set up, microphones tuned perfectly, nothing was hassle. It was a fairly simple award setup in terms of what we needed and everything, but he just made it easy. It sounded great. I didn't have to ask for anything. It was all, well, yeah, brilliant. Levels are great on that. Yeah, that's clear as a bell. Yeah. Oh, you've EQ'd that. Brilliant. Can I have the lights changed for this? Yeah, no problem. And I just wanted to give him a shout out because he's a young guy and he's going to go far. And if anybody knows the guy I'm talking about, put him in touch with me, because I'd love to send him a message and say thank you. It was one of those classic examples where you arrive at sort of 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, you get everything set up, you shake hands, you spend an evening with somebody, you say thanks very much, great working with you, might see you again, and the chances are I'll never see him again, which is a real shame because he's a good guy. Track him down if you know who I'm talking about. Portuguese, it's either Pedro or Pablo, worked freelance.
Could it have been Pietro?
No, definitely not Pietro. I'm sure. I'm sure, but yeah. Thank you very much. If you listen to this, if you listen to the podcast, or you've passed this on to him to listen to, thank you very much. It was great to work with you. So, love to know what his background is and how he came to where he's working now. That'd be a good guess. Get him on next time you're on, and we'll quiz him.
Let's do it.
We'll quiz him. Thanks, mate. Really good to catch up with you. And
you too.
Taking time out of your downtime, holiday time.
There's no such thing as downtime.
It's time to reset. Enjoy some good food, maybe a few drinks. I don't know what your beverage persuasion is, but whatever you enjoy, I hope you enjoy it.
A bit of everything, I think.
Good man. Thanks very much to everybody for listening. Thanks again, as always, to my guest, Kieran Garlick from Present Communications, who are, of course, sponsors of the Event Industry News podcast. Continued thanks and continually grateful for the support that they offer the podcast, which certainly this year you may have noticed we've been out and about on our travels a little bit more, and there's a lot more of that to come later in the year. I've got some really exciting stuff booked into the diary with the podcast later on this year that's going to see the podcast back out on the road in autumn at several venues, TBC. We've got some event industry news related sort of venue showcases and things like that are in the pipeline that we're going to be taking the podcast alongside those sort of venue showcase days to record some episodes with these venues and with other guests that are coming along to those events. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled. There's some really exciting stuff happening with the podcast in autumn, a lot of which can be done thanks to the support of Kieran and the team at Present Communications. So and it just remains for me to say thanks for listening, thanks for watching. If you've listened today, make sure you go over to the website to watch video versions of the podcast. If you've watched today on the website, make sure you go in the opposite direction and subscribe to your audio podcast platform to get all the latest news, special features, etc. dropped into your inbox. And of course, if you're on the website and you are looking for a product, service, or a supplier within the industry, the chances are you'll find it within the supplier directory on eventindustrynews.com. Kieran, pleasure as always. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, James.
We'll see everybody on the next edition of the podcast. Cheers, everybody. Bye. The Event Industry News podcast is sponsored by Present Communications. Present provides broadcast quality live, hybrid, and virtual event production trusted by organizations where reliability really matters. From corporate town halls and conferences to high-profile live streams, they design and deliver fully resilient systems that work first time.